today we gonna start with design for the CNC with FreeCAD, and we're gonna cover the following. So the goal of this session is that we want to design something. Then I'm gonna show you how to set up FreeCAD 0.19, where to download it, and how to make it run. And then I'm gonna use it in order to design this one. And it's a single seat bench with a 50 centimeters height and the seat diameter of 30 centimeters. And we're gonna use 18 millimeter plywood. So each of you is gonna get a sheet. And this is only a demonstration. So what you are supposed to do is you have to make your own design. So this is just an example. So this is FreeCAD website. And in order to download FreeCAD, you need to go to downloads 19 version that you can find here in the pre-releases page. It includes some interesting changes in the path workbench, which we're going to use today. Yeah, and what you have to do, you have to scroll down here where you have all these different artifacts, and you have to choose your platform. So I have it on my computer already. So yeah, I think most of you use Mac, but if somebody sometime uses Linux, then in order to run these app images, you have to enable the execution rights over here with this checkbox. So yeah, in order to start, just make a new file by clicking on this icon. And here I have the default workbench set to part design. So these are all workbenches that you can use for different kind of things. So you can, for example, install also the sheet metal workbench in order to make sheet metal objects, so that there's some interesting things that you could do for the water jet week, for example. And then yeah, you can do also some analysis. So for example, whether a structure is going to hold a certain weight and so on, technical drawings and so on. So usually we start with part design. And then here in the combo view, the most important is the model view. So the tasks, yeah, you can follow those, but it's quite limited because it's, I think it's not very thorough, and that's not for all the scenarios that you might want to do. So before we start to design something, I think we should specify a few variables. And for that, I'm going to switch over to the spreadsheet workbench, and I'm going to make a new spreadsheet with this one. And it's basically like an Excel sheet. What are we going to do? We're going to specify the bench height, bench diameter, or seat diameter, and material thickness. And these three are important because you'll be able to customize your bench and the size of the seats. And also, so having material thickness as a variable is important because I told that the material thickness is going to be 18 millimeters, but it's not always the case. So it's sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. So always before the actual CNC milling, you should measure it again and then adjust your design, just to design depending on the actual thickness. So we're just going to assume that the height is going to be 500 in millimeters. It should be in millimeters. 300 and then 18. And we're gonna go to properties and alias and set the variable names. So these shouldn't contain any spaces. So you see when I add the space, it tells me that it's illegal. And I'm using camel case here. You can do also something like this. This is snake case. I prefer camel case. So seat diameter variable and material thickness. All right, so now we can save it somewhere. CNC FreeCAD bench. All right, and now back to the part design workbench, the model part here. And let's create a body. So the process usually starts with creating a body. And it also sets it to active. So when you right click, then so for different bodies, if you have multiple bodies, then in order to really work with a specific body, you need to toggle it active. And the first thing that we want to do is to create a sketch. So we usually start with a sketch. And with the sketch, always keep in mind that it's important, the orientation is important. So we want to actually look at the chair from the front side, and then according to that, we want to choose a plane which allows us to make a drawing that looks like as if we would be looking at the chair from the front. So hit OK. Now we are in a Sketcher workbench. So you see the workbench actually changed to Sketcher automatically. And here we can start drawing. So I'm going to choose the Polyline tool and start from here. So I'm going to also wait till the constraint is being changed to collinear, so that this point is going to snap to this origin axis line over here. And I am going to, and here I'm going to snap to the x-axis like this. Also the other point over here, like that. And in order to close the line here, like this. So if you look at this structure over here, so what I was trying to achieve here is something that would connect to the top part of the seat. So like so this is called sort of a finger joint. You'll see, you will understand a bit better once we kind of progress in the design. But so in the Fusion design that I did last year, it was so I did it after, but this year I with FreeCAD I decided to add it right away in the sketch on the sketch level, so it makes things much easier like this. So basically, in the sketch level, it shouldn't be too complicated, but also it shouldn't be too simple. So basically, if you can add some features that you know of in your design, then it's a good idea to add them here. So one thing that we want to adjust here is that we know that this line should be vertical. So we make it vertical by using the vertical constraint. And we want these 2 points to align. Easiest way to do this is to use the horizontal constraint. So now they are aligned. And now we need to specify the height. And so we're going to pick this point. So it really depends. If you want to measure the bench from the top of the surface, then you could pick this point. If you want to measure the bench from the bottom of the surface, then this point. So I chose to measure it from here, and the other point is going to be this. And I'm going to add vertical dimension. And here I'm going to click on this blue icon, which is the expression icon, and I'm going to access the spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet that we created earlier, and it's also called by default like this, the spreadsheet. And then with the dot separator, we can access the different variables that we set up. And in this case, it's going to be bench height, like this. I hit OK, and OK one more time. Now, OK, so you see that the size of it jumped quite a bit. And we need to adjust some of the geometry over here. No worries. And we want to specify this height over here, so the top part of the leg structure. And I want it to be half of the height. And this is quite easy to do. So I'm going to add another vertical constraint and use the same variable from the spreadsheet, bench height, and divide it by 2. The cool thing with these variable parameter things is that you can actually do mathematical expressions in here. So I'm just going to take the bench height and divide it by 2. And OK. And now, see, this is like this. Then what I want to have is that I want to have this dimension over here. So the radius, the top radius of this leg structure to be 1/4 of the diameter of the top surface. So if we imagine the top surface of as a circle, so the full diameter is going to be, yeah, like the full diameter, so the full circle. But then, so the middle part has to sit on something, and this structure where it's going to sit, it's going to be kind of half of the diameter. But then now we are working on a half of the profile of this structure, so that this is going to be actually 1/4. In order to do that, I'm going to select these 2 points and set up a horizontal dimension and divide it by 4, like so. And so this one, the width of this one was 1/6. I think in order to set this up, I'm going to select these 2 points. And again, use the same diameter and divide it by 6. Let's see how that looks like. Was this really? Okay. 6 was not enough, so I'm going to divide it by 8 because I'm going to look better. Yep, like this. And I want to center this. So I'm going to select this line and that line and use the equal constraint. It's going to make these lines equal, like so. And then this finger joint. So it's going to be one layer of the material. So this is why we can select these 2 points and set it to the height of the material thickness. And that we have also in the spreadsheet. Like so. Okay. So here, it's 18 millimeters at the point. Now, I want this dimension, it's kind of the footprint of it, so the radius of the footprint of it to be equal to the actual diameter of the seat. And we can do this by adding a horizontal dimension. Spreadsheet diameter. Anyway, since it's half, it's going to be actually a radius, so I divide it by 2, like this. And now there are just 2 things left. So this dimension and this one over here. So I'm going to set up this first. And I'm going to set it to 1/8 of the diameter of the seat. All right, yeah, so it's pretty much personal choice in the way how I developed the sense of making these kind of things is using divisions by 2, by 4, by 8, or sometimes I choose to go with 3, 7, 9, like this is something like a Fibonacci sequence. But then, yeah, so, and also trying to keep in mind that, in a good looking design, there's always like one part that is a bit bigger, and then some parts which are smaller and more detailed. And this you can also see here. So there's one with a bigger part, like the proportionally more like massive part, and then some more like finer details. And here, in order to reach the kind of the right angle so that I can get a bit more thickness on the top, and a bit thinner structure here on the end. And the challenge is also to have enough structure, kind of enough surface, so that the bench actually doesn't wiggle on the floor, that it actually sits nicely on the floor, and the legs do not break. So I have to find kind of the right proportion over here. And so there's 1/8 of the diameter of the seat surface that seemed to be kind of a nice choice. Yeah, I made a chair already once. I tried it out, and it seemed also to work pretty well. So I stayed with the measurement, and I want to make these 2 segments equal. So I'm going to choose the equal constraint over here. And as you see, so now the sketch is fully constrained. So all the lines turned green. And at this point, we can close the sketcher. It's going to go back to part design. Here's your sketch. What we're going to do is we're going to use this pad tool in order to extrude. And now it made it into a 3D structure. Now I'm looking from the right side of it. And one thing before the extrusion, what I would like to do is actually to unhide the origin so you can actually see how the extrude happens. So the origin was hidden automatically when we exited from the sketcher as soon as we closed the sketcher. And in order to hide and unhide objects in FreeCAD, you would use this space button, the space key. And then I unhide the origin, so we can see where the axis lines are. And I'm gonna select the sketch and select the pad option over here. And as you see, it extrudes from the axis to the left. But what we want to actually have is that it's symmetric to that axis. And for that, you have the symmetric to plane checkbox. And we want also to have the material thickness here. And we can hit OK and rotate it back. A nice shortcut here is V and F. So it's going to show you all the elements. So it's going to try to zoom all the elements in your scene into the visible area of the FreeCAD program. Like so. So this is one side, and we would like to kind of mirror it to the other side. No problem. So we can use this create a mirrored feature option. So it's going to take the active body and try to mirror it along a plane. And it automatically also chose the YZ plane to do that, and just mirrored it over. So here, an important point that I skipped was that when I created a sketch, so you see it sort of builds the history over here. At any point, you can actually access the past of the building history. So when I open up the sketch, you'll see that so I took this mid-axis, so the central axis, and snapped the center line of the leg structure to it, and it paid back in a way that we were able to really easily mirror this other part on the other side. So we didn't need to create any extra planes, any extra features. We just used the mirror tool, and it just does it. So it makes sense to kind of stay symmetrical whenever you're making anything that might need use of symmetry in one way or another. And this is our body. So this is the first part. We're gonna rename it to the leg base, and we're just gonna use it as a base. So since so if you remember back, the actual chair structure that we want to have is we actually have two of these, and one of those is rotated 90 degrees around these that axis. So there's also going to be a challenge of fitting these together, but the base structure is going to be the same, and we're going to modify it for each of the rotated parts. And so this is going to be the base, and the actual legs are going to be clones of this. And you can create clones by using this Molly icon, or Dolly. Dolly was the sheep, the clone sheep. And then, so I love this icon. I could just hover it all the time. But then you click twice in order to create two clones. And you use space in order to hide the leg base. And I'm going to rename this to leg A and leg B. And we're going to start with leg B. and rotating it 90 degrees along the z-axis. So you can do that by clicking on the like B. And here, when you click on the data, yeah, so on the data tab over here, you can specify the placement. You can specify the rotation axis by clicking on axis, and here is already set to 1 for the z-axis, so which means that it's gonna multiply. So here you specify the multiplier for each of the axes that you would like to rotate your object around, and z-axis is the blue one, so it's kind of pointing upwards, and rotation around this axis is as if you would be, you know, let's say you all of you have been grilling something in your life, right? So you have like a grilling stick, and you pierce it through a sausage, and then you rotate the sausage. So it's pretty much also in 3D. So basically grilling and 3D, same thing. So you take this stick, and then you put it through the object, and then you rotate it. So that axis is kind of the stick that you put through this sausage, yes. And then you rotate it 90 degrees. And as you see, it did just that. It rotated the object around the axis, like so. And now we can hide it for now, because what do we want to do? We want to create cuts here in the middle of it, so that both of these fit nicely together. And we need to cut a slot, one slot that is cutting out the bottom part for this one. And then for the other one, we'll need to cut out the top part over here so that they can sit on each other nicely. So how to do that? So let's start with leg A. Start with toggling it as the active body. Zoom in. You select the face over here, and we hit this create new sketch icon. It's gonna create a sketch on the plane. Then we use this tool, which is linking edges, or which is linking external geometry into our sketch. And we need this line over here. And yeah, I'm gonna, so now I right-clicked in order to disable the linking tool, and I'm gonna choose this rectangle tool in order to create a rectangle. And I told I want to create a slot here on the bottom. So I'm gonna right-click again, and I'm gonna click on the line and this point, and I'm gonna make them collinear, so that the point is gonna fit onto the line. So, and it snaps like this. Then now, so we want this to be exactly half. So there are several ways how we can do that. So one is reusing the parameters that we have in the spreadsheet, or we can just take this line and somehow split it in 2 parts. So with that, so I'm going to choose the latter, the last option. And in order to do that, I will need a construction line. This toggles the construction line. So now whenever I choose any of these, it's going to draw me a construction line. If I untoggle it, it's going to draw me a regular line. So I don't need a regular one. And I'm going to snap these points together by using the coincident constraint. And I'm going to make it a vertical line by using the vertical constraint. And I'm going to snap these two together as well by using the collinear constraint. And the way how I can make it exactly half is I'm going to select the construction line and one of the edges on the side here. I'm going to make them equal. And the last thing that I need before I cut through is to specify, it's not the very last, to specify the width of the cut, which is going to equal the material thickness. And here I need the dimension. And here I'm going to use the parameter from the spreadsheet. It's going to be the material thickness over here. So, okay. And now you're going to notice that it's still kind of not aligned to the center line. And for that, there's another magic constraint that you can use. So here the sequence of how you select points is important. So you select so it's going to be the symmetry constraint that we're going to be using. And the symmetry constraint means that it makes 2 points symmetrical around 1 point, one single point. So we have this middle point fixed, and we want to actually these 2 other points to be symmetrical around it. So meaning that the distance between the middle point to each of these points should be the same. I mean, you could use construction lines in a way, but so there are different ways how to do it. But this time we're going to use the symmetrical constraints. So I'm going to select 1 and a second point, and then the point which is going to be the guide or kind of the main point in this constellation, I'm going to select last. Like so. And now it all turns green. So now it's fully constrained. We're happy to go. We close this, and now we use this create a pocket with a selected sketch tool. And you see by default, it already creates kind of a dimension pocket with a certain depth, which is 5 millimeters. But what we actually want, we want to cut the sketch completely through it. And there is an option for that, which is called through all. And now it cuts through the whole object. You can hit OK. OK. And now, like B, so we have to do the same with this, with the other one. So we can hide like A, and hide this, and also make it active. And now I'm going to just go really quickly with the same procedure. So I select the face, I create a sketch. And let's close it. And let's hit the pocket tool through all. OK. And now, yeah, both of these are fitting nicely together. In order to see it better, we can actually go to View tab. So select the element, select the body, and set up the transparency, say to 75%. And I also set the transparency of this to 75 and unselect it. So you see, there's the structure in the middle. And the last thing that we want to do is to actually create the top part. In order to do that, I'm going to create a new body. I'm going to rename it to seat. And in Fusion, it's really easy. You select face, and then you can start creating the sketch right onto it. So here, there's one step in between. So you need to make sure that the object where you want to create the sketch or which you want to create is toggled active. Then you select the face of another object. And then you create a new shape binder. It's gonna take this selected face as an input and hit OK. It's created this shape binder over here. You select that and then hit on New Sketch. And FreeCAD is gonna offer it as a surface where you can create the sketch on. Hit OK. And before you actually start drawing the actual sketch, what you need here is to create a circle. So I also was snapping it to the center of the coordinate system, so I get it symmetrical on all sides. I'm gonna right-click to disable the tool, then select the circle, and here I can add a radius dimension. And for radius, I'm going to use a variable from the spreadsheet, which is going to be the seat diameter, but we need a radius. And as you know, like radius is half of it, so we divide it by 2. Okay, and that's ready. And we have the line. You can look, so circle, and now we want to extrude it. We can use the pad, and for the length, extrude length, we can specify again the variable from the spreadsheet, which is material thickness. Okay. And now, if I hide the legs, you'll see that the seat is still without any kind of holes, without any pocket geometry. And this is something that we need to solve. So we need to cut these finger joints through the actual seat. But actually, I figured a better way how to do this. So I'm going to go a few steps back. So before I created the seat. And I realized that I don't want these to go completely through the seat. So instead of having a full material thickness over here, I would like to have it to be a half. So how we can do this? So this is good that we have this leg base object over here. So we can go back to the sketch. And actually here for the height, you could actually go in here and just divide it by 2. Hit OK. OK. Going to recalculate like this. We'll close. And you see these are all adjusted now. And instead of selecting one of these, and we're going to select one of these surfaces over here. And I'm going to use this surface as a symmetrical surface. So for actually symmetrically extruding the seat. Yeah, and I'm going to create the new shape binder over here. So with base 14. And so here we have it. And then a sketch, shape binder. Okay. So let's see. Oh, nice. So it also kept the original coordinate system over here, so which is exactly what we need. Beautiful. And now we have the circle. This. Let's give it a dimension or a radius. Spreadsheet diameter divided by 2. Okay. Here we go. Close. And if we look it from the right, or say from the rear, from the front, you see it's just the line is sitting on these finger joints. And we want the surface actually to extrude both ways, so the seat touches the supporting element, so the legs, leg structure, and it also goes a little bit upwards, thus hiding also the actual finger joints. So we can use the pad, selected sketch. So you see it's tried to extrude upwards. Enter the material thickness over here as the length. And we want to go it down, but yeah, so this is, here I wanted to use this symmetrical to plane feature. And that's why I chose to modify the initial sketch. And now you see once we have symmetric to plane, and the extrusion amount is equals the material thickness, then it sits nicely. It's going to sit precisely on the edge over here, because the actual finger joints that we specified, as you remember, they were mathematically specified as half of the material thickness. You can hit OK. And I'm going to rename it this to seat. Okay. And the last thing is that we actually have to cut into the seat. So how do we do that? FreeCAD has this Boolean tool, which can do operations with in between 2 or more bodies in some cases. So basically you can select the base body and then subtract or add. You can also combine multiple, like make a more complicated Boolean operation, but usually it happens between 2 or more elements. So Boolean, it's basically because it's initially was happening with 2, and then so it's anyway always happening with 2, but then probably there are abstractions on top of the feature in FreeCAD so that you can do subtractions and additions with multiple objects. And then the Boolean operations just happen one after another with each pair of objects. So, the thing is that whenever you are doing these, so let's I'll try it with the seat. Let's say so make sure that the base body that you want to operate on is active, and click on Boolean. And here, for example, we can specify what kind of operation we want to have. I want to have a cut operation, so I want to use the slag structure as a tool. So in order to cut into it, I'm going to hit Add Body and select one of those. So the problem is that we are facing here is that, yes, it does it, but the original object disappears. So I'm not going to do it like this. In order to avoid that, just going to create yet another clones from the already clones. I'm going to create a clone for leg A and a clone for leg B. And then I'm going to select the seat. Yeah, make sure that it's toggled as active. And then go to Boolean. Wait, before I do that, I'm just going to hide the previous ones. So the originals, I'm going to hide the originals because I don't want to use those. I still want to use them later as the actual parts. So yeah, I'm going to select the seat, go to Boolean, add body, add another body. And instead of fusing, I'm going to cut. And that's the final geometry. Hit OK. Here we go. Unhide the leg A and leg B. And then add some transparency to the seat. And we have the one-seat bench.